Guitars as an instrument are one of the few that varies as much as they do. As in, different parts make it a different type of guitar or just an entirely different instrument. From multi-necked, as in there's double neck, triple neck, um, different types of strings, as in from a 6 string to a 7 string up to a 12 string, from the different bridges, like this is a fixed bridge, the strings go through it over up to the neck, but on some guitars you can change it to lower the pitch or raise the pitch. They're made for different types of music. They're just different. And for this speech, I want to try and break down what makes an instrument an electric, like what makes a guitar an electric guitar, what the different components are in it, and how that affects the tone, and how even the wood that the guitar is made of can affect it. To start off, I want to talk about what these are. These are our pickups. They're what make a guitar an electric. These are basically a coil with copper wire wrapped around it. Trying to focus it here on that. Very, very fine strands of copper. Wrapped around hundreds of times. And now, this is a part of a broken down humbucker, which is what this is. This is two single coils make a humbucker, but a single coil has a magnet on the bottom, which is this part here, with pole pieces here, with copper wrapped around it. Now, what these do is the strings go over top of these, like so. And they sense movement of the string above the pole piece, and they transmit it, and they transform it into a signal that goes from here through the control cavity here, volume tone, which the tone's called a treble. Can also be called like a treble bleed or treble cut control, and out through the output jack. The first guitars to come about were basically an acoustic with a pickup strapped onto it. They were bad for feedbacking, like when someone gets up to speak at a mic and it does that really weird high-pitched note sound. That's feedback. But there's two different types of feedback. There's uncontrollable, which you don't want, and controllable, which you can use to your advantage, which guitarists like Hendrix have done, have added into their music to change the way it sounds. Pickups can have different magnets. This one here is a ceramic, and the neck position is a aluminum nickel. Now, the ceramic, you can have more winds of copper around and it not sound as muddy as if you had the same amount of winds on an aluminum nickel one. Now, the more winds you have, the hotter it gets, and sometimes it can get too hot and be muddy, which is why you'd go with the ceramic on a really high output one, because it doesn't get muddy and it can be like it stays clear even as you get up into the higher gain. And humbuckers came about as a way to solve the problem of what was called 60 cycle hum, which is just a humming noise that comes from using a single coil through an amplifier, and it was just a nuisance, and it just got on everybody's nerves. So a guy named Seth Lover, who worked for Gibson in 1955, created the first humbucker. Now, those humbuckers were called PAFs, patent applied for, because he had got a patent for them yet, and they were sold on a what they called a 59 Les Paul, from 1959, like this body style, made of 1959 with those on it, and those are currently the most sought after pickups just because of the way they sound and the way, because the way they sounded was a lot different than pickups now. The technology was mediocre at best. The windings were off. They didn't have the same amount of windings. They'd be mismatched when they got put in a guitar, and that led to a sound that people like Jimmy Page, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and a couple others used, that drove up the price on them. 60 cycle hum was just, if you put this in single coil mode, hear that humming noise? If not, let me hear that. That's 60 cycle. Now, if I go back into humbucker, the hum quits, because these are in reverse phase and reverse wound to make it cancel out, sort of, when they get to a certain, to cancel out when they pick up a noise. The wood that these are made of, the guitars are made of, is also important, because mahogany is more dense, so it sustains more, which leads to longer drawn out notes. This is a mahogany guitar with a maple cap, so these sustain for quite a while. Still going, and it dies. While this guitar over here, which is a maple body, which is less dense, doesn't vibrate as much as a normal, or as a mahogany body, meaning it won't sustain as long. See? Dead. Now, this here is a single coil with this pickup gone, and it has a maple neck, rosewood fingerboard, and it's also been bolted in, signifying a cheaper build. Now, back at the other guitar, my white one, is a mahogany body, mahogany neck, and rosewood fingerboard. That means that, oh, and it's glued in. Meaning that this whole thing, the whole guitar will vibrate a lot better than if it was just bolted on like that one. Which is why people want these bolted in necks less than the glued in. Now, guitars are very, they vary a lot. So, earlier I talked about how guitars have bridges that you can change the pitch on. Now, this is from a project guitar that I have. That I'm still working on. As you can see, it's not finished yet, but when put together, this guitar has this bridge here. There's usually two little points here that this will pivot on, which, if you drop down, will lower the pitch, and if you drop back, will raise it. And these guitars are used mainly for metal, because you can get a lot of different sound effects out of it, such as pinch harmonics that drop down, which a lot of people use. such as Dimebag Darrell and other guitars that are known mainly for metal. Now, look at the inside of the control cavity. You can see that you have these things called pots, potentiometers. These wire into it, and then they go to the output jack, which I don't have installed right now. The potentiometers allow you to change your volume, your tone, or your treble, actually, not tone. Or you can get switches right here, which this one is not having a neck pickup, so I use it as a kill switch. Overall, this guitar is used mainly for classic rock. Guitars such as Slash have used these. Give me 1 second here. Slash considers the Les Paul to be his signature guitar. And this guitar came about when a guy named Les Paul, this is the longest, it's not considered, but it should be the longest running signature guitar because it's named after the guy that created it. And these, he created it out of, he wanted a guitar that sounded like he wanted it. He wanted a guitar that could sustain forever, that was solid body, that looked good. So he created, well, this. It first came with single coils in it, but after the advent of humbuckers, they switched to those. And personally, I like the humbucker more. I like the way it sounds. I like how it doesn't hum as bad as, or how it doesn't hum like a single coil. But I like this guitar because it actually, you can actually get single coil sounds in it. Now that's single coil, this is in humbucker. You can kind of hear a difference, but with a high gain amp like I'm using here, you can't actually tell as much as you could if it was on a clean channel. But as you can see, guitars widely vary, and that's why I love them. I have a couple of them because each one's different than the other. This one is heavy and it sounds good. That guitar there is light and it's straight from metal. I don't actually own this red one here, it's my sister's. But that was actually my old one, and I liked it, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't like single coils. But guitars vary very much, which is why it's my favorite instrument to play.